don't specifically ask for money or they would be the first Kurt would be the first one to get money. I mean, obviously, one is going to flow from one to the other. You don't know how much there's. The drainage district is?
Wow. Because of the flooding.
We are now, it's 3 o'clock, we are now going to have our continued public hearing on items 25 and 26, which are the resolutions for the budget. If anybody would like to speak on those, either of those two issues, please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that to the best of your knowledge the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Okay, so we will now go to item 25. And I'll open the public hearing. You have been, I should have done that. You've been sworn in. I wasn't looking at my sheet, I'm sorry. And we make the motion first, right?
No,
Sorry.
public comment.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Public comment first, and then we'll close public comment, and then she has to take action on the budget.
So, Paul.
So we are after a bit of delay to consider adopting the fiscal year 2025 Pacific County budget for all offices, departments, funds throughout the Pacific County government. We are looking to adopt a grand total general fund budget with expenditures in the amount of $16.3 million and budgeted revenues in the amount of just shy of $15.5 million. That's a discrepancy of approximately $830,000 between budgeted expenses and anticipated revenues. There is some good news with this though, it's simply a matter of timing. We were lucky to receive over $856,000 of unanticipated revenues in the month of December due to excess proceeds from a foreclosure sale that occurred 3 years ago on December 10th of 2021. There were $445,000 of unclaimed proceeds from that sale, which was great. We had to hold on to that for several years before we could collect the money. It was a particularly big sale that year because of the pandemic. Obviously in 2020, we couldn't have a tax foreclosure sale in public setting that year. So there was a huge auction in 2021. Lots of properties, a lot of properties with a lot of value. And again, $445,000 of excess proceeds went unclaimed for a full 3 years. But after that 3 years expired, we were able to collect in the county general fund, which is kind of like an early Christmas gift, honestly. A couple of other good things that happened that were not on our radar is we had some DNR encumbered lands trust allocation that materialized mid-December on the 17th and 18th of December, $315,000 and another $95,000. Again, all of these in total were over $850,000. So going back to the $830,000 budget deficit we had that I proposed to the board that we adopt, we could have simply said, we're gonna wait to collect that December revenue, put it in January, make the budget look okay, or we can collect it early, not keep it in a suspense account, invest the money. So if you're looking at this over the long term, we were simply able to put the money to the bank in December instead of holding it in suspense to deposit it in January to make the budget on paper look okay. It just makes sense to deposit it as soon as you can so you can invest that money in the bank. So again, what we're talking about here with $16.3 million in the general fund, that's just the general fund. For all funds throughout county government, we're looking at $58.9 million in grand total budgeted expenditures and $48.3 million in anticipated revenues. Looking at potentially taking upwards of $10.5 million out of the collective fund balance. Now, some of this is strategic. We have the American Rescue Plan Act. We have the American Rescue Plan Act, which the county received over $4.3 million in federal money in relation to the COVID-19 pandemic. That money came into Pacific County in 2 separate tranches in 2021 and in 2022, each over $2.1 million. The county created a separate fund to be able to house that money. And we thankfully haven't spent a lot of that to this point. Again, $4.36 million came into the county. We invested that money into the local government investment pool, bond opportunities, and as of right now, we still have over $4.1 million of our American Rescue Plan Act money left. And it has to be committed by December 31st of this year. Still can be spent for the successive years in 2025 and 26, must be spent by December 31st of 26. And being that we are a county that received under $10 million in ARPA funds, every county nationwide that received under $10 million in ARPA funds could simply claim a lost revenue exemption and use that money for all government services, basically personnel. Other counties, in my opinion, wasted some of that money on superfluous projects. For us, we've held that back to be able to offset personnel costs. In Pacific County, compared to our neighboring counties around us, Lewis County, Grace Harbor County, other counties are cutting filled positions going into 2025. We are thankfully really not in that position compared to many of our peers. In 2024, the grand total the county government had over 219 FTEs within all funds throughout county government, with 99 of those in the general fund. We're looking at only a 0.6 FTE reduction overall within county government, going down to a fraction over 218 FTEs. It's a 0.6 FTE change. Part of this is, it's a reduction overall. We have had to add the new Department of the Coroner, as we talked about during the main body of the regular meeting, which we feel is an unfunded mandate with no revenue to support. Again, as Commissioner Olson mentioned, it is the right thing to do because it can be construed to be a conflict of interest to have your prosecuting attorney and your coroner be the same person. So we understand that it's the right thing. It's just like everything, there's a huge cost. And so with that, we have taken a look at a lot of the vacant positions, specifically throughout the general fund, which is the primary operating fund of Pacific County. That's the fund that your taxpayer dollars go into. That's your property tax, that's your sales tax, that's timber tax, that's other excise taxes that literally every elected official throughout Pacific County has to fight for. And those dollars are finite. Our fund balance is only anticipated to be about $4 million in total cash in the general fund on January 1st. And again, we have over $16 million of budgeted expenditures that we have to absorb. You really are not able to be in a position in your general fund to just collect infinite money in that fund. There's a state law that puts a cap on how much money a county can have in its general fund so as not to overtax your citizens and just create slush funds and reserves. So you have to manage all core services for the assessor, the auditor, the treasurer, the clerk, the county commissioners, the sheriff's office, prosecuting attorney, now the coroner, out of that one pot of money where there really is not a lot of departmental revenue that comes into those funds. Again, it's property tax, it's sales tax, it's timber taxes. We have had some escalating costs that are completely out of our control in this county, just as other counties have been dealing with. The biggest one that I talk about all the time is Indigent Public Defense Services. Indigent Public Defense Services 2 years ago cost the general fund over $590,000 total expense. And the state of Washington reimbursed us to the tune of less than $30,000 for all of those expenditures. Every bit of the remaining money comes out of those general funds. I mean, for reference, I've been putting the budget together since 2011. The FY 2012 budget was the first one I put together, and back then, we actually got a little bit more money from the state. We're talking $35,000 or so, but we only spent in the $200,000 range, $250, $270, $285. It continues to go up. Now those costs are pushing $600,000. They're constitutionally protected costs. There's nothing we can really do about it, but the money has actually gone down. So it puts an extra burden on the taxpayers of the county, and it's a perpetual challenge down here trying to look for where's the money going to come from when elected officials rightfully advocate for more staff, more supplies, more services within their office, specifically within the general fund. Now, the county has many more types of funds than the general fund, and we get kind of into the weeds with this, but I just wanted to make sure I clarify that special funds, such as funds in the health department, the elections fund, are usually paid out of grant monies, permit fees, the Department of Community Development right across the hall. They don't typically receive those general fund dollars. They're not funded with tax money in the same way. They're typically more self-sustainable operations that the department manager has to manage that fund balance for that specific purpose. And whereas the general fund, everybody's fighting for that same pot of money because there really isn't that departmental money to come through. So what we've tried to do is balance the long term. What can we sustain if we add a position? Can we sustain that position, not just this year, but through the next? From my point of view, that's the best way to take a look at this. Again, I started down here in the Department of General Administration in February of 2011. My previous job, I worked in the Sheriff's Office. In 2008, I was a civil clerk in the Sheriff's Office, started up there under the late Sheriff John Vivian. Came down here February of 11, and it was not too long after the Great Recession, 2008, 2009. County in 2009 had over 197 full-time equivalents, 197 FTEs. Going into FY 2010, there were 27 full-time equivalents that were cut. It's a huge loss, going from 197 to 170. Further positions were cut in the next year, getting down into the low 160s. By the time we got into the middle part of the decade, we were down into the 150s at times in terms of payroll that the Board of County Commissioners was approving up here at this dais. We've been able to gradually add back through what I believe is a frugal management of county resources, strategically prioritizing core government services to be able to add back to get to the point where the FTE number that I mentioned, we're up over 218. And again, we were at 170 in 2010. We've been able to gradually add things back while not compromising our reserve funds, while adding to our general funds to allow for the ability to pay our people. The payroll that we have that goes before the Board of County Commissioners is repeatedly $1.2, $1.3 million per month just for payroll costs. We pay for people to provide government services. That's where most of your money goes, is to hire people to provide those services. It's not dissimilar to a school where you're gonna hire teachers to teach the children. You're not buying a lot of supplies, you're investing in people. And especially in the general fund, overwhelmingly those expenditures are tied to people. There's not a lot of things and stuff in the general fund. There really aren't a lot of operating supplies. There aren't a ton of professional services. The money is tied to people. And salary and benefits cost a lot of money. We've done our best to try and prioritize paying our people accordingly. The county is in the midst of a wage compensation study right now. We've tried to take a look at, are we appropriately paying our people based on the metrics that we have historically used? Typically, what we do, based on the Public Employment Relations Commission and information that I would argue that the county gets saddled with by PERC. You take a look at counties of comparable size, counties of similar population and assessed valuation. Population and AV are the big ones. And so for us, what PERC does is they take a look at counties that are within 50% below to 150% above population and assessed valuation. When you look at the counties in the state of Washington, most of those that are quote unquote comparable to us are on the east of the mountains. And the work is often dissimilar to what we do. So, here in the Department of General Administration, what we try to do is take a look at this differently, knowing that this is gonna cost a little bit of money, that we can lose people to comparable counties. We know we're right next to Grace Harbor, which is 3.25 times our size. We know we're right next to Lewis County, which is 3.5 times our size. We probably will never get to the point that we can pay equivalent wages to what those counties are gonna be able to pay. We realize that. But what we tried to do is take a look at, is there something that we're missing? Is there a better way to look at this? So we hired a consultant from the outside that has performed this work all around the country for county governments to take a look at what should we be doing differently? And that's ongoing, and we're hoping to get the results of that study soon. And so anyway, as I go forward here, the approach that we've taken is to try and be responsible with taxpayer dollars, try and keep things sustainable also, because as the commissioners have mentioned on the dais, there are a lot of things that we would like to pay for, but there's just not enough money. If I take a look back at the general fund over the last several years and actual expenditures in that fund, 2019, not even $12.1 million. In the pandemic year, in 2020, it dropped to $11.4 million. Came back up to $12.01 million in 2021, spiked to $13.9 million in 2022, dramatically increased to $16.2 million in 2023. And the current budget with all supplements is right below $16.2 million in the general fund in 2024. It's $16.19 million. Again, the budget that we're proposing here is at $16.3. So that's 3 years in a row, just trying to figure, okay, we've reached what the water level is with what we can sustain with the revenues that we have at our disposal. The public usually doesn't want to hear it, and it's always an uncomfortable conversation, but based on where we are, with what we can sustain, with the amount of employees that are in the budget, the amount of money that's in the fund balance, the only answer is to really consider raising taxes. Nobody likes to hear that conversation. And that's where we are. If it comes to the point where we end up in a Grace Harbor County situation, and we have to cut fill positions, and we're talking significant positions. I met with the Grace Harbor County Administrator about 6 weeks ago, and he had proposed to their board, across the board, 10% cuts at all county government. And you're talking 450 plus employees that work there. 10% of 450 plus employees, that's a lot of positions. That's a lot of people that just don't have jobs anymore. Lewis County, same type of story, where you're talking high 7-8% cuts being proposed countywide, all funds across that county. Again, with the way that we've tried to manage funds here in this county, we have not had a mass round of layoffs in quite some time. We have really done our best, and knock on wood there. We have really tried to invest your tax dollars responsibly. For example, through the finance committee, which I think is a body of elected officials that the public maybe isn't aware of what they do, that it even exists. Finance committee is comprised of 3 people. It's the elected auditor, the elected treasurer, and a county commissioner, typically the chair of the board. And the primary goal of that committee is to look for investment opportunities. What can we do with our money to make money on it safely? Back when I started down here in 2011, the high end that was typically authorized for the board to be able to safely invest was in the $2 million range. What we've been able to do with what's happened with the market, with the Fed really juicing interest rates, things just, inflation going out of control, trying to take advantage of that, and we have gone into the range where we've invested as many as $15 million into the local government investment pool and safe bond opportunities. That has brought back a lot of money to the general fund that has offset and allowed us to continue to pay for a lot of these core government services. In real dollars, what does that mean? There have been years down here when the market is bad, not able to invest money through a variety of reasons, that we collect far less than $100,000 a year in investment interest with the general fund. Last year, we collected over $1.5 million in investment interest due to what we've been able to put out there into safe investments. This year, we're trending towards 1.7 million. I mean, and that's money that was just, if we would have sat by and done nothing, nothing happens to it. But we've tried to take a proactive approach to be able to sustainably pay for core government services. And again, if you're talking county aggressive in terms of investments, it's not really the same as being aggressive in personal finances. Trying to look for safe bond opportunities, work with the local government investment pool, the LJP, and so on and so forth. So, again, with that being said, I am happy to propose this budget to the board with the numbers that I've put out there. And again, on paper, when you look at the 16.3 million and the 15.49 million, there is a budget deficit that we are facing. The good thing is we got that one-time revenue, but long-term, you can't count on one-time revenue. That's the challenge. And so, if everything plays out according to projections, and we start this year with around $4 million in the bank, hopefully it's a little high, maybe that's a conservative estimate, I'll just try to start low. All things go according to the budget, and we spend every penny that's budgeted, and we projected the revenues exactly right. We end 2025 on New Year's Eve with a little bit less than $3.2 million in the bank, which starts to get down to where it's a really unsafe amount of money, and it starts getting uncomfortable when you're talking, is the expenditure burden next year going to be pushing 16.5 million, 16.8 million. Cost of living goes up, cost of fuel goes up, cost of supplies goes up, who knows what's going to happen with inflation, all of that. So how do we sustain it? Again, what we've tried to do in the short term, I mentioned with the American Rescue Plan Act money, is to be savvy and keep that money set aside for personnel. Those are core government services. And again, every county in the country that received under $10 million is able to use that lost revenue exemption. Basically what that means is, counties were harmed by the pandemic. Revenue earning power dropped dramatically. We weren't able to collect as much revenue for a variety of reasons. The federal government obviously flooded the country with money, and governments around the country received equitable amounts based on the population. The ARPA allocations are available for the public to view. They're still out there from the Treasury website. Trying to do the best we can with those dollars. And as we go forward, there are still some pretty profound challenges if some of the one-time revenues don't materialize. What happens if there are other unfunded government mandates that we simply have to absorb, like the Department of the Coroner, things like that get thrust upon us. And all of a sudden, we have, like with the Department of the Coroner, putting the figures out there and what that's gonna cost, you're talking over $400,000 that doesn't have revenue to pay for those services. In the proposed budget for fiscal year 2025, just those coroner services are looking at $430,000. And again, there's no money for that. That's all brand new. We have to take that hit, make sure that we set enough money aside. But where do we take it from? That's always the question. And again, everybody is fighting for that same pot of money. And everybody has, all of the elected officials and department managers that are fighting for those general fund dollars all have valid reasons for that. I would love to be able to continue to add everything, but again, short of raising your taxes, there's just no additional money to be able to go further than we are without, we've added it now, and in a couple of years, everybody's gone and then some, because we've depleted the fund balance, and now we can't pay our people. So that's the challenge that we face down here with, again, if those are your personal finances and you're looking at, okay, I'm gonna be spending 16 million bucks next year, I only have 4 million in the bank, and I'm counting on, just through a show of good faith, all that money showing up. And there are a lot of pieces of the puzzle to revenue to City County that sometimes don't materialize. Private timber harvest, private timber, warehouser timber, can be a good year, we might see 1.3 million. There could be a bad year, it's $1 million less. And trying to factor what you're gonna be paying on a potential 7-figure fluctuation in revenue for one revenue stream is a pretty dicey proposition. Again, going back to the investments I spoke of a few minutes ago, you're talking $70,000 to potentially $1.6 million that can fluctuate within the span of a couple of years. And if you are building your budget on the back of revenue that might not materialize based on actions that are completely outside of your control, it makes it a tenuous situation. Property tax is the plurality portion of the general fund revenue. But again, it is not the majority. It's a big piece, but it is not the majority. It's closer to a quarter, I mean realistically. When you're talking about what does that pay for? It pays for close to a quarter of the general fund services. Sales tax is less than that. Sales tax is $1 million or so less than property tax. You add those two sources together, the two biggest pieces of the pie, and it's still not even half of all of the expenditures within the general fund. And so we try and continue to look for opportunities, what grants might be out there, what other savvy decisions can we make safely with your money. This is your money. I try and be very careful with that. Again, looking at what's happened in other rural counties of comparable size and our neighboring counties, it's quite frankly been a bloodbath of layoffs over this last stretch for a variety of reasons. We have largely insulated ourselves from that here in Pacific County. Again, looking at the numbers, which all of the county budgets that I've put together since my time in 2011, beginning of the fiscal year 12 budget, are on the front page of the county website. We try and make it really clear on our old-fashioned GeoCities style website that's in drastic need of a redesign. I totally understand that. But we try and make it clear where to find those things. It's county budget right under general administration. It goes right to the current budget. At the bottom of that page, there's a link to past budgets for nearly a decade and a half. Anybody can go in and fact check the figures that I'm putting out there. We also provide links to the state auditor's office reports right on the county website. I hard link the documents. I also link to the SAO website so you can grab them there for yourself. For the good and bad, years that things haven't gone as well, those are all right there for the public to view. You know, keep us on our toes. Make sure we're doing things the right way. Get public engagement in how the board is spending your money. That's how this is supposed to go. It's great that we have 41 participants on Zoom. Typically in a budget workshop, there are the times where we literally have nobody coming into the budget workshop, which is not how this is supposed to be. And I know that there are probably people here today that just hung around because of the previous workshop, or the previous matter before the board's consideration during the regular public meeting this morning. But I do appreciate those citizens the day after Christmas, pushing 3:30 in the afternoon, that have hung around all and most of the day to at least hear this. Because ultimately this is really the board's primary responsibility to certify tax levies and ultimately to fund county government. For a big county, when you're looking at a general fund that's under $20 million and overall county expenditures that are under $60 million, that doesn't seem like much. For us, that's a lot. And that has gone up tremendously over the time that I've been down here. The general fund, again, my first year down here was around $8 million, and we're more than double that now. Total county budget with all funds, including the general fund, is in the 30 million range, low 30s, even we're pushing 60. We're actually looking at an overall reduction to try and pare back costs as much as we can in FY '25 at 58.9 million. And by comparison, looking at 2024, all county funds together, we were at $61.4 million when the budget was adopted. So we're trying to be conscientious and cautious, protect the money, because last year, we anticipated overall that we were gonna get about $48.6 million countywide. This year, we're looking at about $48.3 million countywide. Looking at a little bit less money likely to come in, and realistically, at what point do things become unsustainable? So, all of that being said, happy to present this to the board this morning for your consideration. Appreciate the elected officials and department heads that spent time in budget workshops this year. We had to really go back to the old school way of doing it and have budget workshops that didn't have a Zoom option due to multiple instances of being what's referred to as being Zoom bombed due to overly explicit pornographic videos. Not subtle, not subtle. Some of the individuals in this room were here for it. And for many, many years, we did it that way. There's always the ability for somebody to call in if they want to request the Zoom option. If they can't make it in, but they'd like to participate, we have a conference line if they can. It's not a matter of keeping the public out, it's a matter of when this happens 3 times, then at what point does it become a pretty significant matter? But anyway, I do appreciate the electeds and department heads that participated in this process. So, I think that's probably the end of my presentation here. I usually talk for about a half hour or more on these, so I do appreciate people indulging in that. It's critically important. We're getting pretty late in the year to adopt in December, but there's been a lot of work from the various electeds providing input and a lot of discussions and workshops about how do we go about balancing this thing as close as we can, and we've been dealing with this revenue challenge. How do we balance the budget 2025? We're staring at a shortfall. Budget gap was pretty significant when I put the preliminary budget out to the various electeds. Trying to pare it down, we're still over 800 short. We were lucky and thankful that some of those monies materialized, but you're not gonna have $440-some thousand of excess proceeds from the foreclosure auction every year. Most years, you're gonna chop a zero off of that at best, and you might not see anything. You're not going to see timber allocations in that way materialize from the state. That's just not likely to happen. We are hopeful that it happens again, and we will be there with open arms if it does, but that's not a good way to do business, in my opinion. So.
Well, actually, not hopeful on that, so we don't want anybody to lose the property, but.
No, we don't.
But it happens.
Right. Anyway,
Thank
that's the
you.
conclusion of my comments.
There are 4 resolutions, involved in this, and, I will consider, doing a resolution. Oh, I'm sorry, I need to close the public comment period.
Is there another individual that wants to be
Oh,
sworn in?
I'm sorry. Mr. Hagan?
So, I think you guys are in violation of the Robert's Rules of Order, and motions were made, the public was held out of the discussions before the vote was cast. I think that's a violation of Robert's Rules of Order. I wanted to comment on a couple of the issues that were brought before the board and they passed the vote on. And,
Just one second, is this about the budget?
well, it is about the budget.
Okay.
So
Because
we-
we're gonna, we had public comment, but it was under item number 1. We are gonna do a public comment at the very end of the meeting. So if it's about various subjects, if we could get through the agenda, that would be great. If you wanna do it now, that's fine.
So what I wanted to ask is about the budget involving the coroner's office. And you're saying that there's problems in the funding already, and then we're starting a new Department of Corrections, it's gonna take additional funding, and the coroner's office, and I'm wondering, how come, in a situation where they're having problems with funding already, how come these issues that we have raised at this time, and how do I want to say it? When the motions are made and the public's omitted from the discussions on the motions that you guys are voting on, then that sends a bad message to the public that we don't want you here. And I think that's a violation of Robert's Rules of Order. I think you guys, when the motion was being made, I think you guys need to open the floor for discussion before you have your vote. I'm not sure, but I'm pretty positive.
When did we not do that today?
Well, I raised my hand when we were talking, and you said, no, we're not open for public comment. But it was, my comment, my discussion, I had questions involved in the discussions that you were voting on.
Madam Chair, this is not a matter pertaining to the item on the consideration.
If we could, we will have a public comment portion after this, if we could discuss that at that point. You generally we have the public comment period at the beginning of the meeting, generally during the body of the meeting, who we hear from is usually our department heads or the people that are pertinent to that particular matter. The public is always welcome to make comment. We just don't always do it during the body of the meeting. We do it at the beginning, and sometimes we'll open up at the end if somebody is on or, online and they missed the beginning and they wanna make comment, we'll do that.
But I think the public comment period is separate from the discussions that you're supposed to have on motions.
Well, we may have to get clarification on that. Anyway, we're gonna go ahead and go through this. Jimmy, if you have more comment at the end, we're gonna open up public comment, okay?
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Which one? Yeah. So now I will close public comment on this particular item 25.
Having public comment on the budget?
Need to be sworn in, so he
Yeah,
certainly could.
did you have a comment?
Can I make a
I
comment?
need to swear you in.
Do you swear me in?
Raise your right hand, please. Do you acknowledge the testimony you are about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
So it's kind of informational. I don't know if it's practical or theoretical. Rebecca Park, basically the chief accountant for Pacific County, and I submitted the budget. I don't know if it's an issue for you guys. It was an issue for me. Is that the ending fund balance you're talking about is $3.2 million. So the cash outflow is consistent. So big bump with the first half property taxes and a smaller one later on. So the issue for me was that I had to have sufficient ending fund balance to carry me through March, because we would come pretty close to have to be watching the expenditures. And so basically my comment is that sometimes the public looks at that money there and they go, oh boy, there's still money to spend to balance it, like to hire more everything, and it's not really there. I need for cash flow, and of course obviously for emergency, but I need the cash.
General purposes and Pacific County Road District road purposes, regular property tax levies, and providing for the distribution of the general purposes levy.
That was second by motion.
Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Item number 2.
Move to adopt resolution number 2024-062 in the matter of county-related field and personal property tax levies for collection in 2025.
That was second by motion.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Item number 3.
I move to adopt resolution number 2024-063 in the matter of authorizing a shift of $1 million from the road fund levy to the general current expense fund for the fiscal year 2025 budget.
That was second by motion.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Item 4.
I move to adopt resolution number 2024-064 in the matter of raising Lee County employee hire.
That was second by motion.
And Paul, would you speak to that, please?
Sure, so that resolution is often confusing to individuals when they see a hiring freeze resolution. It does not mean that we cannot hire people. In accordance with the resolution, it simply says that any position that an elected official or a department head intends to hire, whether vacant or filled, has to come before the board for their consideration. It's just a way to provide a bit of fiscal control with the issues that we've talked about with cash flow, how much money we have available. And again, since you elect the Board of County Commissioners to be responsible for public money, This is not an abnormal thing. The hiring freeze resolution technically went into effect in fiscal year 2024. Most everyone that's been hired in Pacific County has been hired under a hiring freeze. Again, it's simply a protected mechanism, so an elected official or a department manager gets their budget. There are a certain amount of full-time equivalent FTEs. You have a great person you want to hire, but you have to get approval from the board before that goes through, just as that, for that level of fiscal responsibility.
Because an employee is a long-term commitment, and we need to make sure that you can fund it. Any questions, comments? All in favor?
Aye.
And that will conclude item 25. We'll move on to item 26. We'll open the public hearing. Mr. Blackinger, you are still sworn in. This is regarding our different plans that are associated with the budget, like flood control, transportation improvement, parks and rec, those things.
Yeah, and it really all speaks, it's all connected. You have one more quite large resolution put together, which is the one that ties it all together. The resolutions that the board has already taken action on really set the table for this final one, which puts together the various transportation plans, flood control, zone district plans, the resolution that lays out the apportionments of our various judges, the Superior Court judge and the two district court judges, recognizes the salaries of the elected officials, and really just ties it all together. And most of what I said in the first public hearing pertains in the exact same way to this item here. Again, this very long-winded resolution that will be before you is just bringing everything together that the board has already taken action on within these previous resolutions.
Is that it?
Yeah, that's it.
So we'll close public comment on that, and I will entertain a motion.
I move to adopt resolution number 2024-065 in the matter of adopting of the fiscal year 2025 Pacific County budget, including the 2025 through 2030 comprehensive transportation improvement and the 2025 road construction programs, the 2025 through the 2030 capital improvements plan for parks and recreation, and the 2025 through 2030 capital improvements plan for Pacific County Flood Control Zone District Number 1, levying county general purposes and road district purposes property taxes, and setting forth the categorical appropriations, applicable limitations, and responsibilities, including recognizing the 2025 salaries of Pacific County elected officials and judges.
That was second, that motion.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, items regarding Department of Public Works, item 27.
I move to approve the 2025 Bruceport Park Maintenance and Operations Contract with Rebecca Sheline, effective January 1st, 2025 through December 31st, 2025.
That was second, that motion.
So, Becky has been at Bristol Park for the last 2 years, and her and her husband are out there running the park, and they do a phenomenal job. And a lot of stuff, good things out there, and between DPW and Dave Gessens right now, he's our interim, fair manager and parks manager. They're doing some much needed upgrades out there, and getting some things taken care of, so park's looking beautiful.
Haven't heard a complaint out there, that's great.
We've got a lot of comfort on how nice it has
Yeah.
looked.
Really
Just
done a
maybe
great
not
job.
right now because of the storm kind of took some trees down.
Yeah, I imagine there's some
Might not
lights
be as
down.
pretty at the moment, but, yeah, they're working on getting that cleaned up.
They do a great job out there.
Yeah, they really do.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Items regarding general business, item 28.
I move to approve the appointment of Eric Anderson, coroner of Pacific County, Department of the Coroner, at step 6 of the special employment agreement, wages schedule, and approve the special employment agreement effective January 1st of 2025.
That was second, that motion.
Yes. So, as the board has now created the Pacific County Department of the Coroner, Eric Anderson has been doing very similar work here on behalf of the county for quite some time, and was a natural fit to slot into this role. Thankfully, he was interested. And so he came to my attention, met him earlier this year, we started talking as this was getting closer and closer, realizing that this was really going to become a real thing. And really happy he's gonna be joining the team. Again, there was an option to make this an elected official or a department head under the board. And the decision was made to make this a department of employment. That seems to be the decision that counties with a similar predicament have been facing. So just to put that out there, welcome aboard there.
Aye.
Item 29.
I move to approve the appointment of Brandy Hoover, Chief Deputy Coroner of Pacific County Department, at grade 17, step 6, of the management wage schedule, effective January 1st, 2025.
I will second that motion.
Brandy has been with the Pacific County Prosecuting Attorney's Office for a very long time, and for the last several years has received a coroner stipend to perform very similar duties that she would be performing here. And it's a big loss to the prosecutor's office, but we're really happy that she's gonna be jumping over to this new department, because she'll provide some continuity and expertise, since again, she's been doing this work for a long time. So, again, Brandy, thank you, and welcome aboard. Right, yes. It's really important, I think, to know that they know each other, they've been working together.
All in favor?
Aye.
Item 30.
I move to approve the appointment of Jim Bird, Director of Pacific County Jail Services, at step 6 of the special employment agreement wage schedule, and approve the special employment agreement effective January 1st, 2025.
I will second that motion.
All right, so we discussed this at length this morning, and I think contrary to maybe the public's perception, maybe I can't convince anybody in the room otherwise, but that's fair enough. But I had never met Mr. Bird prior to this current year. When I was introduced to him based on his experience, had an impeccable reputation, long background in corrections, and high level of work in a correctional facility that has a lot more capacity than ours. Grace Harbor County Jail has several floors, can hold over 170 inmates, and often only has 2 correction staff walking the floor at a time, with another monitoring the video feeds. So he's been used to doing a lot with even fewer resources than we've had at our disposal in the Pacific County. Again, Mr. Bird has a decorated military career prior to this time serving local government, and happy to bring you aboard. And I know, again, Mr. Parker's in the room, and I do, again, you might not believe it, but I do wish you the best. And I do thank you for your service, respect your military service, I want to call that. Mr. Parker is a veteran, I think that's important to recognize. And
He's losing his job, yes.
and again, Mike, I do thank you, and I'm sorry. But again, Mike, I do wish you the best.
As I do.
He's not losing his job, but somebody is.
All in favor?
Aye.
Item 31.
I move to approve the appointment of Caitlin Ochoa, PACOM Director, at step 2 of the special employment agreement wage schedule, and approve the special employment agreement effective January 1st, 2025, in accordance with the PACOM Administrative Board's recommendation.
And I will second that motion.
Kate has been doing patiently all day, and I'm pleased to make this recommendation, as it was fully supported by the PACOM Administrative Board. Caitlin has really stepped up as our interim director of Pacific County Communications for the last 6 months. She was put into this role on July 1st. We originally looked outside for an individual outside of Pacific County, and realized we had the right person there all along. And I'm really happy that Kate, the interim tag is being stripped off of the title, and hopefully provide a little bit of peace of mind there. So congratulations, Kate.
I do want to say thank you to this board and Amanda and everybody that's been supporting me, the staff. I've had a lot of support with the staff, and I'm really looking forward to what's to come.
Thank you.
I would also like to add, I appreciate Caitlin's engaging with the board. I tell you, I've only been here 2 years, but since she's been on board, there's been a lot more engagement with AdCom, on that direction, so, kudos to her for doing an exceptional job that she's, was tasked with, and even though she was intern, there's no guarantee on anything, so she did prove herself on this.
Something with the work, created new training manuals.
Thank you.
Yeah. All in favor? There's one other.
I move to approve vendor claims, warrants number 173-186 and 173-282, an amount of $230,984.84, subject to adequate budget appropriations and all county policies.
And I will second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that concludes the bulk of our business for today. We did say that we would open public comment again. So if there's any public comment from the board.
So again, I'd like to reiterate, I think that we're going to have the discussion before the board votes on these matters, and that's the time to involve the public in the discussions. So I'm confused and I'm worried and I'm concerned about raising property taxes to pay for, new boards, new, commissions, new coroner's office, and new expenditures of money, large expenditures of money, in a time when the budget is very uncertain. So, you're falling back on the taxpayers to fund these projects, and what bothers me, I think what bothers me most is that the person that's recommending all this does not have a liability for his office. He's running under your bond, you've appointed him, is that right? You've appointed Mr. Blackinger? So he's running under yours, and he doesn't really have to answer to anybody, and he's raising these taxes and recommending. So that concerns me, so everything that he's doing, and he admits that we don't have the money to do it. But he's making all these recommendations, that was my first deal. And then you said that there was appointments to boards and commissions and committees. Now, I asked for a workshop quite a while ago with the Pacific County Drainage District, Washington State Parks, Washington State Patrol, over the flooding in Grayland in the Pacific County Drainage District. I got no response in the workshop. The highway is completely flooded now. We drive it through, it's completely flooded, and it's all a man-made deal out of policies out of the Pacific County Drainage District. And it's, how come I wasn't, when I came and genuinely asked for, in writing, the workshop, I point out, this is the second time I petitioned for this workshop out there in that drainage district problem. Because there's misappropriation of funds, there's a whole bunch of stuff going on, and it's very shady, underhanded dealings that are going on out there. And somebody's gonna get hurt and killed. And it's because of, there's already been wrecks over that water that's on that road, somebody's gonna get hurt and killed out there. And it's all a preventable deal. It's commissioners that are doing it, and they're out of hand. The commissioners out there have already been lectured on not having public meetings. Nobody knows when they're having a public
You
meeting.
mean the drainage district?
The drainage district commissioner. And so I wanted to comment on that when we were item 24, when we were talking about these presentations. And why hasn't my request to review that situation before liabilities get taken over? Because I'm telling you, if somebody gets hurt out there, I'm gonna be the first one to step up and say, why wasn't this fixed? See, I mean, I'm adamant that this is a fixable situation, should have been fixed years ago.
And you're talking about water over.
Water over the highway, water over Cranberry Road, flooding at the intersections on the deal, and water over Summers Lane, and very serious problems that involves Washington State Parks, Fish and Wildlife, important beavers. We had a situation with Grace Harbor Drainage District offered, because they're under contract to take water.
And that's time.
Well,
I know you don't wanna hear it.
we can try and facilitate a workshop, Jim. You do understand that we don't know, I mean, we can try and help the best we can on the county roads. like, is Cranberry Road in Custer Grace Harbor? I know it's on the county line, is it half-half? Is it?
It's half-half, but it's the Pacific County Drainage District #1, and that's a county deal.
No, it's not.
Pacific
It's-
County Drainage District #1
It's
is
called
a county.
Pacific County Drain, it's just like the issue with the Port of Tesla that's been going on. The county commissioners have absolutely no control over them. They're their own elected commission. Now, we can facilitate a workshop between, if you would like, we can try and do that between DOT, state parks, them, so that all this can be talked about, but we have no authority over that. We have authority over our county roads and how this may impact them and their maintenance, but we have no authority over the drainage district. They're a duly elected set of commissioners, just like we are, over a much smaller thing, but
So why haven't they been brought into the workshops? Why won't they have regular public meetings? They've already been lectured for not having regular public, they're in violation of regular public meetings. And they're a rogue outfit, it's gone rogue. And somebody's gotta have checks and balances over the county, definitely, I think the prosecutor's office.
as we found out with the other issue, that's a difficult issue to address, if that's the case, because there's not a lot of, recourse.
I'd like to have a workshop on that issue out there on the lines.
Okay, well, we'll talk to Amanda and see if we can get, and again, just so you realize, we would be facilitating this for you. We would sit in as owners of roads in that area, but this is not we can't tell the drainage district what to do.
The roads are being seriously damaged.
I understand that, and we're willing to do that, but I just want you to understand, we're willing to facilitate this workshop, but we can't control how they spend their money, okay? So, but we can try and get us all together and discuss it.
So, can I just ask, so is the county auditor, do they audit how the district spends their money?
No, that
Who
would be
audits?
state auditor.
That's
State auditor. State auditor audits all of the different junior taxing districts. The county auditor only audits Pacific County funds.
Maybe they should be involved too.
I don't think, they absolutely don't have any dog in
Go
this
ahead,
fight,
you
so.
have a card, email me.
Okay.
And,
Madam Chair.
we'll get some guys to come out. and
Jimmy,
we can look at
if you could just, email me with that request, that way I'll have your email on file and, we'll get that going. I just wanna make sure I have your email for you.
Amanda, thank you.
Thank you.
You bet.
And I'll look at some road guys. Is there any way to on it?
I do, but, okay. I don't understand the RCWs completely, but it seems to me this meeting was, to reiterate, underhanded. We didn't have proper time for the public to think it through, and you are here to represent your constituents, the people that voted you in. And the people here pretty much represent a lot of the public, and you had a lot of people over there on Zoom too, but we are here to support our county sheriff that we voted for. And you're stripping him of the jail, and personally, I know somebody that's been in the jail for, I won't go into details, but, what you're doing is jeopardizing the safety of, as I see it, in the jail. Because these deputies are no longer gonna have guns and so forth, from everything I understand. Are you stripping them of their deputization?
That's a situation that will have to be resolved. If the sheriff chooses not to give them a commission, then we have options on.
I can't hear you.
If the sheriff chooses not to give them a commission, then I believe we have options on how they will be commissioned. They don't carry inside the jail anyway, as far as I know, but they will need to carry on transports.
It just seems like a wrong placement of power in the wrong hands.
Well, thank you for your comment.
And I have other thoughts about this, but I have to formulate them and get my legal background on. And I don't know, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Reed. Mr. did you have something?
Yeah, about judge appointment, Penoyer,
About what?
with William Penoyer.
Oh, for pro tem, yes.
Yeah, when my photography kind of habit career started, there's a killdeer nest on a mixed tube, or it was in Washington State, Buffalo Hills Trails in downtown Grand Washington, and Walter Lee Mitchell was allowed to start a construction project without any contractor's license, no bond, no insurance. And he got this property when William Penoyer was representing the Port of Willapa Harbor, and they sold Mitchell the island where those 4 condos are and that other area for far below fair market value when the people that own the catamaran shop, they wanted to buy it too, and so it should have been put out public bid. And
That was the port. right?
yeah, so you know, I didn't know Mitchell or anybody anything at the time. I just knew there was a nest there, and I told Mitchell about it. Just be careful of this nest when you do construction. So it wasn't even in the area that he was supposed to do construction. So the next day he went and destroyed that nest, and so then that got me out there taking pictures of all the illegal activity he was doing, and that got me. And then he filed a restraining order against me. Elizabeth Penoyer granted the restraining order against me. And I found out her son, William, was one that had business dealings that allowed this construction to be taking place. And our other son was the Raven City attorney that wasn't enforcing any of the laws that I was talking being broken or any of the codes. And so then my rights were restricted for 4 years. I brought that up and she recused herself from the case, but then Nancy, the other judge, McAllister, she kept on putting a restraining order against me because I said if I see him out in public and I'm going to take pictures of him. If I see him committing crimes in public, I'm going to take pictures, and from the public view. And so then I got my restraining order reinstated. For and it's just it was basically covering up because I was exposing what was going on. And so now he's going to be a judge.
He's the judge pro tem. He sits.
Pro tem. Okay, but you understand, it's just like, that's probably a county liability if there's blatant corruption going on, and he's gonna be put in a judgeship.
This is a reappointment. He's been.
Okay,
judge pro tem.
yeah.
We can certainly check into that.
I filed a judicial complaint against Penoyer after she recused herself, and against her and Nancy McAllister.
And that is
And
time.
she retired a year later. It's kind of like retire or, and there's a couple of people in the room that signed off on the bridge to the island, and then they retired from their position after the bridge started failing.
That was, I think that was pretty much all city agreement, but
Yeah, that is
we can
city
check
agreement,
in,
yeah,
we can
but
check
that's-
to the other issue if you'd like. Thank you.
I just wanted to ask, how much was that official bond for? For Penoyer's official bond, how much was that for?
What?
Official bond.
How much was the bond
Is
for?
it 10,000?